I made these giant shapes using nothing but a couple command blocks, and I'm gonna show you why. Now these are parametric shapes, which is just a pretentious way of saying that all these complex shapes are just made of simple math. And I've enjoyed making these and showing them off in some of my past videos, but you guys always say the same thing whenever I do. We need a tutorial. So that's exactly what I'm doing for you today, and I might secretly teach you a little bit of math as well. Now let's get right into the shapes, and I've laid them all out over my world, which you can download in the description, but we're going to take a look at them in order from the easiest to the most complex. So stick around till the end if you want a real challenge. Alright, so I'm over here at our first shape, and this one is going to be a spherical spiral. It's the most basic, but I still think it's pretty impressive. So let me show you what happens here. We only need these 3 command blocks, and I'll put the commands on screen right now. And so if we want to make this work, then all we have to do is flip this lever, and you'll see it starts off just like that. And you'll see it will summon a boat, and that boat will start spinning, and everywhere that boat is looking, it's gonna summon a block. Really simple. I think it makes a pretty cool shape like you'll see here. It's not that impressive, but I wanted the first one in the video to be something pretty cool that literally anybody could do. And if you want to take this to the next level, you can change this middle command block to look like this, and then the next time you turn it on, it'll start summoning end crystals like this. And this one is super satisfying to look at and watch generate, but it definitely will cause you a good amount of lags. So if you're playing on mobile, you might want to consider making this number just a bit higher so you have fewer entities. And it would be super satisfying to destroy, but sadly it's laggy enough that you don't really get to see the full glory of it. Still pretty cool, I think. Moving on to our next shape, this one is called a hyperboloid tower, and you've probably never heard of that shape, so I'm just gonna show you what it looks like. First, we'll press this button, which will just summon an armor stand and a boat way up high, and that's where we're gonna draw the shape from. Next, we'll move into this stack of command blocks, and right here. And so with those entities summoned, we come over, click this lever, and you'll see it'll start spinning and putting lines around. And you'll see that alone makes us a really cool shape like this. But this one isn't that much more complex than the last one because it's really just spinning an armor stand and creating lines wherever it's looking. And if you were looking closely, you might have seen in one of these command blocks that I use the /function command. And if you don't know about the /function command, then let me put you on here. And so this function actually comes from this behavior pack that I made for myself. And there's a little bit of mumbo jumbo that goes into creating a behavior pack, but in reality, this whole function is just one glorified text file where I just copy and pasted this setBlock command 20 times. So it's really not that complicated. And so you could accomplish the exact same thing with these command blocks, which are doing the exact same command, but throwing it into a behavior pack saves me a lot of time and I don't have to place 20 command blocks. So if you play on PC, I would look into making some functions. But using that same function to create the hyperboloid tower, we can modify a couple of the values and make a solid shape that looks like this. And that is a massive shape that generated so fast. And this curve that you see along the edges actually just comes from a tilt in the angle as we generate, because we're only ever generating straight lines. And I think this shape is pretty sick, and so I went ahead and I tried to design this shape into a nuclear power plant. And I'm not a pro at building, but I gotta say this actually turns out pretty good. And if we just plug it into my trusted old friend, then it looks even cooler. This next one is where things start to get a bit more complex, and this is a spinning cube shape. But let me just turn it on and you'll see what I mean. While this one isn't as practical and I can't see any building cases where this would be useful, anyways, super satisfying. But more importantly, this introduces us to nested iteration. Now, nested iteration is a tricky concept, but it's not too complicated. It really means we just repeat one action, and then when we've finished that action, we move on into a second action, and then we alternate between these two actions. In this scenario, one action is this boat drawing a square around the perimeter, and then every time that we complete that action and we've drawn one square, the armor stand moves up one layer, and we do the same thing one layer higher and tilt it a little bit so that we get this spiral effect. Now, since this is getting quite a bit more complex, this is where I'm breaking out the /scoreboard command. And I know it's scary, but stick with me because I swear it's not too bad. So like always, when we start our contraption, we'll start by summoning a boat, and then we'll also summon an armor stand. Those are just our 2 entities that we're going to be using. But then this command block is also going to be giving a scoreboard objective to the armor stand. Now, all these commands are what actually make it work, and it's a bit much, so I'll just throw them on screen as we go through through them. So this first command will activate every time we start a new layer. The armor stand will put the boat in the back left corner just so it knows where to start drawing the square from. And then from there, we're just gonna have the boat place a terracotta, and after it places every terracotta block, it will just move forward one block. And every time it moves forward one block, we increase the scoreboard so that we know how many blocks we've drawn. And then all these command blocks are going to be testing that scoreboard to determine if we need to rotate and draw the next wall of our square. This command block will just test for when we've completed one layer, and it will move us up one block to start on the next layer. And then at the end of all that, we just reset the score, and we can keep doing it over and over again until we get this giant shape. Overall, the shape is pretty complex, but it's really satisfying to watch generate, and it just looks sick. I'm sure it could be incorporated to a build somehow, but I am not good enough at building to figure out how to turn this shape into a cool structure. So someone else can do it if they want. All right, moving on from that spiral into our next shape, which is going to be a torus. And for any of you that don't speak nerd, a torus is just a giant perfect donut. Let me just show you. All right, so like all the others, you'll summon an armor stand and a boat, and that's what we're gonna use to generate it. And then when we flip this lever, you'll see it starts creating a circle, and then as time goes on, it will keep repeating this in another circle, and eventually we end up with a giant perfect donut. And so yeah, it's literally a giant perfect donut. The tricky part about this shape is that we're essentially creating two shapes built into each other. Like the boat will create one ring, but the boat is also creating a ring around the central armor stand. So we essentially get a ring of rings. Again, it's that nested iteration, and so we need to bring out the scoreboard, but the actual algorithm isn't too complex. It's just all of these command blocks. And so much like the cube, we give a scoreboard value to our boat. And so whenever we start a new ring, we teleport the boat to be looking straight upwards. And then we start setting a block wherever that boat is looking. We'll do one in front and one behind the boat. And then after we do that, we rotate the block 5 degrees down. And as we rotate it, we add a scoreboard value so that we know which direction it's facing at all times. And then whenever we create one outer ring, we rotate the armor stand just a little bit so that we can create the next ring in a slightly different place. And then after we've completed that ring, we'll have a couple commands to teleport that boat to the right place. And then we make sure it's rotated the right direction. We reset everything so it's looking straight up again. And then we reset that scoreboard value. And so overall, the algorithm isn't too complex to generate the torus, but optimizing it was where a lot of the work came in, because I don't want to sit here for 30 minutes watching it generate, and I'm sure my editor doesn't want to do that either. And so I just about doubled the commands, and that's why you get some of these repeats generating a block in front and behind, and that got the generation time down to about 5 minutes probably. One thing that I really like about this shape is the interior, and so I actually added a command to just throw some glowstone on top of it, and it looks really satisfying. It gave me the idea to turn this into a bit of a space station, and I'm not really much of a builder, so I decided to just throw it up on stream and let anybody join who wanted to build it, and you guys actually did a pretty good job. I think this looks pretty sick. All right, we're moving on to this final shape, and this one probably will never get incorporated into a cool build, but despite that, this is probably my favorite. And you guys actually get a bit of a 2-for-1 here, because this is a double helix. Now I've created 2 algorithms that can generate this. This one is actually very simple, summoning just an armor stand, boat, and another armor stand, and both these armor stands have tags. And then all the commands you need for this one are this. Now this is the simplified version, so it's not gonna look as cool, but it generates really fast, and I would say most people could actually create this one. And it's simple enough. I'll just put the commands on screen right here, and that's how it works. So essentially all it does is it clones this shape at the armor stands as it goes up in a spiral. So you'll see it's pretty fast. But I think it looks pretty blocky and overall not that impressive. And so that's why I decided to make it a lot more complex, just so it would look a little bit nicer. And so it starts the same way, with the boat armor stands and scoring them, with the boats the armor stands and giving them a tag, but then you'll see it starts spinning them individually, and it's a significant amount slower, but I think it looks a lot cooler. I think this one, much like the spinning cube, is super satisfying to watch it generate, but we also get a really cool product in the end. We'll start by teleporting the boats to the correct positions relative to our armor stand on both sides, and at both the boats we'll run this function generating magenta terracotta where it's looking, and as we do that we're spinning the boat so it creates a circle. We're updating a scoreboard so we know when it's completed a circle, and then whenever we have completed that circle, we're going to increase the scoreboard value of the central armor stand and teleport it up just a little bit. We'll reset all our variables and teleport them up 1 block, and then whenever we make it to the desired height, we kill the boats and the armor stands. And so the algorithm isn't too much more complex than the torus, really just adding another variable so that we can track it as we're spinning it upwards. But I think it's really cool. It genuinely is just a lot of fun to create. And if you're looking for a really hard challenge, the one shape that I couldn't figure out was called a hyperbolic paraboloid, which is that classic Pringle shape. So if any of you can figure it out, then tag me because I want to see how it works. But outside of that one shape, I made just about anything I wanted. So if you've got a cool shape that you want to see if I can make in Minecraft, then leave a comment down below. And if this video gets enough likes, then I'll make a part 2 with all of your guys' shapes. Anyways, thanks for watching the video. Go create some shapes and don't forget to download this link in the description. Subscribe.